Okay, great. So we're doing Sefer Yetzirah, and I'm really excited that we are really, really doing this because we're heading towards a very important day that we're having some amazing scholars, both academic and actual Kabbalists, that will be focusing on this day. To be honest with you, what we do today is just going to be not even like a tip of the iceberg, because this work is a mystery. You know, I jokingly say sometimes I get a speaker for the shul, or in this case, I work together with the JCC and with David to get certain presenters, and I'm probably even more curious to hear what they have to say than just about anyone else. So, David, you with me on that?
Yeah, always, Rabbi. And we also have a bunch of drummers.
Oh yeah, yeah. Don't think it's just speeches. We've got some pretty cool drummers and music and things. So I'm really excited because, for example, we have Moshe Idel, who he's just he's the greatest, you know, he's the best. He's a giant in understanding Kabbalah. His just the amount of his knowledge, his insight, it's just really, it's beautiful. And then we have Rachel Elior, who's a teacher like no other. I've never heard somebody create kind of like a novel out of what would otherwise be just kind of facts and historical, you know, analysis of ancient manuscripts, that she literally turns it into a story and fits it in places you would never expect. So I'm really like, you know, I'm excited. And then of course we have Dr. Kelman, who's just because we see him every week doesn't mean he isn't an important teacher. He's a very thoughtful person, studied for many years with Rabbi Brandwein, and really has a Masorah in the Sulam and that derech. And then we have Rabbi Dov Ber Pinson, who's really one of the great Kabbalists in New York City. Mindy Ribner, who's been teaching meditation for years, partially based on Sefer Yetzirah. So she's coming back, so to speak, for this, and one of the books. Yossi, why don't you hold up the book?
Oh, okay. I will hold up the book.
Jill Hammer wrote this one of the latest books, maybe the latest book on Sefer Yetzirah.
Who's that by?
To be doing something together, like an interview.
And she's a reconstructionist rabbi called Jill Hammer, and she has written a number of works, including one on the calendar, which was quite superb. And
she's a very mystical, you know,
yeah.
She's got a mystical bent to her. She's not just an academic, and you know, she's you know, got some good stuff. That's like her thing now, you know.
And she talks beautifully, and you know, and is again very, very thoughtful.
Yeah, so it's exciting when Nathaniel, who's, you know, Nathaniel Berman, a longtime favorite of ours, a chavrusa of mine. We actually did Sefer Yetzirah. We spent some time on it 5-6 years ago.
Avi's here. Avi's here, Rabbi.
Oh, okay, Avi, welcome.
Will all the sessions be recorded?
Thank you, Rabbi. How is everybody?
Thank God we're good. Yeah, all the sessions will be recorded. I don't know what, if they're gonna, I don't think they'll necessarily just put them online for everyone, but they might email them to the participants. So it's definitely worthwhile to like sign up.
Several good people in just a short time. You might, a lot of overlap.
Yeah, there's some overlap.
Not as much as normal though, which is
a little less.
We've been, and so it would be interesting because it's the first time we've done this as virtual Day of Kabbalah as opposed to in-person Day of Kabbalah. So it'll be interesting to see how it works as an experiment, because if it works in a virtual setup, it could provide us with whole new avenues in this regard.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I can't make a l'chaim because it's only seltzer. I can make a bracha on it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol ne'midbar.
Amen.
I don't know if it's ginger peach, Rabbi. It could have some alcohol.
Georgia peach. Georgia peach. It's in honor of Purim, V'nahapachu. We're going to transform Georgia into a seltzer drinking state yet. Or maybe they're going to transform our seltzer experience.
Well, it's now a blue state.
Well,
I think it's
yeah,
kind of like
expect that to
purple
swing
state.
back and forth.
Yeah. And they even, they have a Jewish senator. Gosh, the South will never rise again. I wonder if there's been another Jewish senator up to this point before, it was Judah Benjamin, certainly. And there were, I think, some Florida senators who were Jewish. But I think there's been a great gap for many, many decades, if not century.
Wasn't Cantor wasn't a senator? Eric
No.
Cantor?
No,
Congressman.
yeah.
Congressman.
Was
What do you mean? What about a lot of congressmen are Jewish? Yeah.
Cohen,
Yeah,
was it
right.
Cohen from Tennessee? Is he Jewish is he senator or congressman?
Congressman.
Yeah, lots of Jewish congressmen, but not too much in the Senate. Okay, so let's do Sefer Yetzirah. So you can follow along in Sefaria. Okay, Sefaria under Kabbalah. You click on Sefer Yetzirah, and I'm just going to jump right in. I'm not going to give an intro. I'll just I'll just say that the Sefer Yetzirah is really old, and it's very hard to figure out because the main way that the difference between academics and scholars of Kabbalah who are non-academics approach anything is the academics try to situate the thing within the context of when it was written and before it was written. They compare it to other texts of that time and earlier to kind of see where it's coming out of and how to compare it to. And actual Kabbalist isn't necessarily going to be interested in locating the equivalent of the contemporary and earlier strata of similar things in Judaism, or definitely not in other religions, and trying to situate the Sefer Yetzirah so much in that context. They're going to be looking towards
And is in the room.
like the Zohar or the Bahir or the Arizal or Rabbi Moshe Cordovero or the Baal Shem Tov or the Baal Sulam. They're going to be looking for whether it's a 13th century or a 17th century or 18th century system, to explain the Sefer Yetzirah. They're going to be looking at the commentaries, the Ramban, which, by the way, we really only have what they say is the Ramban on the Sefer Yetzirah is actually not the Ramban. It's somebody else. It's still decent, but they actually did recently find the Ramban, the real Ramban, on the first chapter, which is magnificent.
Oh.
He actually talks about what we call the system of the Lurianic Simpson and so on and so forth is very clear, almost parallel to that, spelled out hundreds of years earlier in the real Ramban commentary in the first chapter of the Sefer Yetzirah. But that's a key difference. I'm not an academic, but I still have to say it's really hard to study the Sefer Yetzirah for me because there's a little part of me that wants to try to not be an academic. I'm not trying to be an academic, but there's a curious part of me that just wants to understand it, the thing, if not in and of itself, but not just from later Kabbalistic works that we have to kind of backward fit Sefer Yetzirah into backward. So it's a struggle for me because of that. So I'm not going to lie to you. There are great commentaries. So, for example, a number of years ago, I did a lot of Rabbi Moshe Cordovero explaining Sefer Yetzirah. It's wonderful. It's brilliant, and he gives it so much respect. We'll talk about the type of respect he gives it in terms of the influence that it has. But at the same time, it's fitting into like a system. It's adding to the system. It's the basis of the system. And perhaps there should be an exploration of how much influence Sefer Yetzirah had for something so small to have such an oversized influence, which is interesting because it's referred to as the Mishnah. It's referred to, each paragraph is a Mishnah, and it is similar in the Kabbalistic world to the kind of compact quality that the Mishnah has and the authority that the Mishnah has. The Mishnah was written or given over by Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, and it has like it's considered the Torah Shabbal Peh. It's considered the like authorized version of the oral Torah that's then explained and argued about and reconfigured and added to, or whatever some people say subtracted, but mostly added to by the Gemara. So in that sense, the Sefer Yetzirah has that component as well. Anyway, that's more than I wanted to say. I wanted to really just jump in here. And like I said, an intro for something that is going to try to make sense out of it. I'm going to leave that to the Sunday. I'm going to leave that to Moshe Idel and Rachel Elior. So 1:1, chapter 1:1. Right now, I'm going to start with using Aryeh Kaplan Sefer Yetzirah. It's wonderful. It's the best we have, but there's still some things that are really. It's an amalgamation of so many commentaries, so it's a little confusing, and also it's like if you look online and see what people are doing on Sefer Yetzirah, it's like there's tremendously popular, very limited, but tremendously popular 10,000, 15,000, 5,000 views of people reading, essentially just reading. Some of them have only one of them, I watched a few of these videos, only one of them actually admitted that it's Aryeh Kaplan. The rest of them are just quoting him without actually giving attribution, or misquoting him or misunderstanding him or trying to pretend like they have something to say and twisting his things. Some of them are fine, but it's really all based on Aryeh Kaplan. I don't think not one of the people that I saw, again, I didn't make a comprehensive survey of everything out there on YouTube, but whatever I saw were people who clearly could not understand anything on the Sefer Yetzirah without Aryeh Kaplan. They're just really, basically reading his words and either saying the same thing as him, or one of them was like taking certain things he said and like going even further than him, but not because that person might be like a spiritual person and did some internal work on it, which is interesting actually to hear, but from a perspective of somebody trying to actually understand what the Sefer Yetzirah is, I didn't find it really helpful. So and I'm not really going to add anything either, because I recognize my ignorance of the Sefer Yetzirah. I wouldn't say I'm not humble. I wouldn't say that I don't understand a page of Talmud or I don't understand a page of Zohar. I wouldn't say that. I'd say I work hard to understand them, and some I understand more than others. But I could say about the Sefer Yetzirah, it's a mystery. It's not out of humility. It's out of it's out of the clarity of really saying what is going on here. But that's not going to stop me from trying. Okay.
But there isn't a single text that we're not reading from a text today. You're reading from that, right?
Yeah, we are reading from a text, but I don't know that it's too complicated to do what Ben and I usually. Ben reads the Aramaic of the Zohar and I read the English. It's not going to work for Sefer Yetzirah because it's too compact, and we want to get every word in Hebrew and in English. So it's in the chat if you want to pull it up.
I don't know why I don't see chat. Maybe, but yeah.
Otherwise, look
Oh, I
on
see. I
Sefaria
see.
under Kabbalah.
Yeah, I got it now.
For Sefer
Okay,
Yetzirah.
thanks.
Got it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. B'shloshim b'shtayim nesivot puliot chachma, with 32 pathways. Okay, now the word netivot, like there's a synagogue I remember in Berkeley, California, netivot shalom, pathways of peace, right? But netivot is particularly used on a path in the water, right? We make it? He who makes straight a path in the water, right? That's like the netivot. Pliot is a type of wonder. So 32 wondrous pathways of chachma, of wisdom. Okay, so right away you ask, what are the 32? I'll tell you. It's very easy because that's some of the mystery of the Sefer Yetzirah is simply you have to read the next page or the next chapter. Okay, so the 32 are the 10 sfirot and the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. By the way, the 10 sfirot, that's the first mystery. What are the 10 sfirot? They're not necessarily what we all know are the 10 sfirot, Keter, Chachma, Bina, all that. It may or may not be. Like I said, the commentaries fit it in to the 10 sfirot that we know. But from a historical, academic perspective, that's very questionable. Okay. So, but as in any system, if you want to understand the system, first you have to read it, and then you have to start understanding it by going back and trying to put the puzzle together. Okay, so we've got 32 pathways of wondrous wisdom, and with them, so they're like a tool, Chakak, Yud He, the first two letters of God's name, Yud Ke Vav Ke. You could pronounce them. I don't pronounce them necessarily. I call that name the unpronounceable name of God, Havaya, which is a kosher way of being able to say it. Like some people say Hashem, Havaya. Tzvaot, by the way, some people say Tzvakot, because it's also one of God's names. It's one of the, like I guess you call it, it doesn't have the same sanctity as the Yud Ke Vav Ke, but because it means it. Look, all names are attributions of divine abilities, the way the Kabbalists explain it. Tzvaot is often a military, like not a platoon. What's a bigger when you have like a
Regiment.
regiment or whatever, some military regiment or equivalent of that. But it's also it's the Lord of hosts, so to speak. It's the God that has an army of angels, or the people of Israel who are his host of his followers, so to speak. So you've got this engraving of God, and then another name for God, Tzvaot, a third name for God, Elokei Yisrael, the God of Israel. So you got 4 names so far. Now we have this concept of engraving. I'm not going to lie to you. That one is also going to be explained by the Sefer Yetzirah. That's why it's like I didn't want to waste time on a long introduction, because the idea of engraving, we have plenty of engraving in certain particular texts within the Zohar. But again, do I want to quote 5 different Zohars that we ourselves did 3 of them in just our group in the last year or two to show you, oh, this is what it means. I can do that because we did it together. I wouldn't be lying. And possibly, I would say the Zohar was influenced by the Sefer Yetzirah. This idea of engraving, this whether it's Beresh Hermanusa, Demalka, Galaf Galifa Batir or Ilah, this thing that appears in a number of times in the Zohar, which is kind of its own version of the creation story, and it's kind of like more concentrated form. So he engraved these 4 different names of God. Elokim Chaim, the living God. That's yet a 5th name of God. Umelech Olam, King of the world. Okay, so it's also referring to God in another descriptive form. Kel, another name. Shaddai, Rachum, V'chanun, Ram, Benisa, Shochinad, V'kadosh Shemo. So I'm losing track of that. I don't even think it's 10, it's more. So again, is this just poetry? It certainly is poetic. It certainly has a very, like it resonates. And that's the thing. It can just reading it and even just understanding it less is more. From a poetry and a meditative technique, if you start reading the whole Aryeh Kaplan, I'm not saying you should read the whole Aryeh Kaplan, to get something out of it. But if you just read it, you're going to miss out on the poetry of it. Okay. So it's almost like a song, like we'd make a song. Right? Elokim Chayim, Umelech Olam, Kel Shaddai Rachum V'chanun, Ram Benisa Shochinad, V'kadosh Shemo Maram V'kadosh, Maram V'kadoshu, Maram V'kadoshu, Maram V'kadoshu. Uvara Esai Lama, he created the world. The Holy One, the blessed be he that's elevated and exalted and sanctified. And with those 32 mystical pathways, with that wisdom, he engraved the world. He created the world. B'shlosha Svarim, with 3 books. B'sefer, V'safar, V'sipur. This is amazing. These 3 words. Sefer in a book form, in a written form. Safar in a number form. Sipur in a story form. That's beautiful stuff here. So again, what is the text, right? And what is the number? So probably the text is going to be the text of the Torah, but what's the text of the Torah written with? The 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. What's the number? The number is going to be the 10 Sefirot. So again, I don't want to explain it. I want the Sefer Yetzirah to explain itself as best as it can, limited obviously by me. And then because it is so cryptic, it's so hard. Like the more you try to really understand it, the more it's like, I can't understand it. I just don't know what this means. So let's try to see it from itself. So I'm not going to stop. I could and try to pontificate on this first one. Let's not do that. Let's go on. Any questions? I'm going to regret that. Any simple questions? Because the truth is, you could stop here and just try to teach Sefer Yetzirah, or we could just go further. I think we should go further.
Go on.
We'll take questions later. Okay. That cool?
Yes.
Okay. If you want to pick, if anybody has any interest in seeing one commentary, we could take a look at one commentary. If you click on it, it says 29 commentaries in the Sefer Yetzirah, and it says 3 from Kabbalah. You must be wondering, wow, why are there only 3 from Kabbalah? But if you click on it, you'll see there's 21 of them are the Ravid. 4 are the Ramban and 4 are Sadia Gaon. So obviously the Ravid and Sadia Gaon, I already talked about the Ramban, so let's focus on the Ravid and the Sadia Gaon. They both had a lot to say about the Sefer Yetzirah. So at some point we should, take a look at this, their style, but I'm not ready to do that yet. Okay. And look, if you guys really like this, let's make this a 4-part thing. It doesn't have to just be today. Tune in obviously to the day of Kabbalah. That'll give us that'll really help us. And then we could do this for another 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. We could do the whole Sefer Yetzirah. We could do 1 chapter a week. So it's 6 chapters, or so. It's not very long, Okay, number 2, 1-2. And the Kaplan is on page 22. Eser Sfirot B'Lima, 10 spheros of without a what, meaning they're mysterious or unknowable. He'll again say how infinite they are. The Esrim Mishtayim Otiot, and 22 letters. So right away, let's just assume it's not a stretch to say the 32 pathways are the 10 sfirot and the 22 letters add up to 32. Is everyone with me?
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a good argument, that's not what the 32 is, that I will listen. If you have a better idea, if you think you have a better idea of what the 32 is, it's the heart, Lave, I'm sure it is that also, but now
I do have another thought on 32.
Yes.
Which is connected to Lave, which is that the first letter of the Torah is a base and the last letter is a lamed.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. And it's brought down the commentaries. I know Arya Kaplan brings it down. Of course, there's a lot of great things to say about Lamed Beis and Sifur Chachma, more than just interpreting it by Mishnah Beis, right? Like what Zeb just said. Great observation. I don't know, how did you figure that out on your own, or you saw that somewhere?
I probably read it in Kaplan at some point. I don't know.
Yeah, it's in Kaplan. Well, you have a good memory, you know. So it's in Kaplan. So Mishnah Beis, we just said 10 spheros, right? And now we say Yisod Shalosh Imot V'Sheva Kfulot. So let's talk about the letters. So there's 3 mothers, 7 doubles, V'Shtayim Esrei Pshutot, and 12 elementals. So later on, we're going to explain that. But basically, we're dividing the letters into 3 different distinct categories: mothers, doubles, and elementals. The mothers will have its own Mishnah, so we're not even going to comment on it at all right now. The doubles also, the double is letters like they are Beis or Bet, Gimel, Daled, Kaf, Pei, Resh, and Taf. And they each, what's different about them than the elementals is that they express 2 sounds. I'm reading from the Kaplan right now. And the elementals are everything else other than the 7 I just mentioned and the Aleph Mem Shin, which is going to be the mother. Okay. So I know it doesn't satisfy you, but again, you got to keep going here. It's a system. It's going to explain. I'm not saying it's self-explanatory, but these what these 3 and the 7 and the that you just have to wait. Okay. Mishnah 3, page 32. Now you notice I didn't stop to talk about the 10 Sefirot because honestly, I don't know what they are. And I've given many talks on the 10 Sefirot. So I know what the 10 Sefirot are in Kabbalah. I know what they are in Chassidut. I could explain them in Chabad Chassidut. I could explain them in the framework of the Zohar and the Ari. I could then also say that's what they are in Sefer Yetzirah. I would like to leave that as a possibility and that I'm going to probably be forced to do that anyway when I give up. But let's pretend that I don't know. And I think I was telling you guys before, like sometimes when you learn something, when you don't know, it's kind of interesting, Instead of saying, I know, oh yeah, sure, I know 10 Sefirot. I don't know. I don't know what the 10 Sefirot of the Sefer Yetzirah really are. So let's see what the Sefer Yetzirah says about the 10 Sefirot. So it tells us in Mishnah 3, Eser Sefirot B'lima. This is like an hour of me saying, I don't know what this means. There are 10 Sefirot without anything. And again, that translation of Blima, he translates it of nothingness. And that's pretty much the same as he said in the earlier Mishnah. There he just refers to it as same way. Just for typographical reasons, it's 2 words there and 1 word here. I don't know if there's any significance there. But Mispar Eser Etzbaot, with the number of 10 fingers, Chamesh Keneged Chamesh, 5 opposing or corresponding to 5. You have 5 and 5. By the way, there's the obvious way of reading it is 5 correspond to 5 is going on the right hand versus the left hand. There is another way. I remember it brought down in the Ramak, in Moshe Cordovero, and the Pardes Sermonim, that there's a correspondence between the 5 and 5, between the 5 of the right foot and the left foot to the right hand and the left hand, respectively, the toes to the fingers. So this would be the 10 Sefirot of Kedusha, and meaning the human, the unique, your hands are uniquely human and your feet are not. Monkeys have better flexibility with their toes than we do, right? So there is something about that, but let's leave that. That's again not what I'm trying to do. I'm just falling back. I know I'm slipping. David, what were you saying?
No, the Arizal talks about the 5, from the 5 you get 5 levels of loving kindness and chesed, the 5 hasidim.
Yes, yes, you have the Hei Chasadim, correct.
And then you get the 5 levels
of also,
dinim,
by the way.
Of dinim, and the 5 dinim he basically associates with the 5 daughters of Slofhad, and then so I'm not quite sure
Always
who
getting a bad rap. What do they
who's
do?
the equivalent. No. The important it ties into the Sefer Yetzirah, because the important thing is that of the 5 daughters of Slofhad, 3 of them have been sweetened. That's what the Arizal says. One of them is intermediate, and one of them is in need of sweetening. And so once we've achieved that sweetening, then it's part of returning the maker to his place.
Ah, nice. Okay, great. So now it's about to get what is going on. So far, I'm going to say no problem with that. Okay. If I was trying to figure out which 5 fingers are or which 5 Sefirot, I could tell you there's like, I remember, I think 4 different explanations just in one commentary, just in the Ramak. I believe there was 3 or 4 different ways of explaining what that means and coming up with it. And some of those are actually mentioned, I believe, in the Kaplan, who's really an amalgamation of many different commentaries. Now, but what's about to come, let's just assume that that's somewhat difficult because you're trying to fit in what's possibly what is it, a square peg into a round hole. But okay, not a problem. We'll figure that out. They figured that out. But the next thing is keneged ubris yachid mechuven be'emsa, and the covenant, the unique covenant, the one covenant. Mechuvan. Mechuvan means exactly, specifically, in the middle. B'milat halashon v'milat ha'ma'or. In the circumcision of the mouth or the tongue, which means the speech, and the circumcision of the ma'or, of the place that's physically circumcised on the 8th day of a male child. What is going on with, first of all, I get the 5 and 5. How do you then go from 5 and 5 to the correspondence, a covenant in the middle between the mouth and the male member? I mean, it's where the circumcision takes place. Like, what is going on? It doesn't like you start thinking you have it, and now what's going on? So, from a Sephirah perspective, you could say, okay, you've got Yesod is the Brit, and the mouth is Malchut.
Right.
But then you've got 12. So it's so like if you're just trying to figure out the numbers, you got 10 fingers and 12. 2 other things, it doesn't match up. So again, Ramak does a job, he works really hard, he comes up with an explanation. But let's just say, and I spent a lot of time studying it, and now I forgot it, and now it's like, if I don't, the Ramak's a genius, he fit it in. I'm not a genius, I can't fit it in, maybe I don't even want to try to fit it in. Let's come up with something.
Hello.
There's
David.
Oh, David, welcome. We're
Hey,
doing
David.
Sefer Yetzirah tonight.
What?
We're not doing Zohar, we're doing Sefer Yetzirah in anticipation of the Day of Kabbalah on Sunday.
What page?
It's in the link.
Yeah, click the link
Click on the link.
here.
in the chat over there.
I have the book in front of me. Just tell me what page.
Oh, page 32. Okay.
The Arya Kaplan.
Yeah, I'm using the Aryeh Kaplan.
Good.
So I have a thought on that
Yeah,
question.
go ahead, Zev.
So the 2 parts of the body that are identified with the covenant there that are in the middle, what they have in common is that they're like a mediator of a type of communication. Like you communicate with the tongue to connect between one and the other, and likewise the other organ is also used in a connection. And since it's in the middle between the 2 sides, it's not just sort of balancing the 2 sides, but able to unite them with one another. And that's like what these 2 places have in common. And that's what a covenant is, right?
Yeah, a covenant brings 2 things together. So I'm gonna just hang on to your last words, because I agreed with you on the first part, but to me that's Kabbalah. You know what I mean? I know, Zev, you've been studying Zohar like crazy. I know you know it. You know what I mean? Great, you got it. But I want to hang on to the less obvious for a but more obvious for a non-Kabbalist, right? We know that there was the idea of a bris we have in the Torah called the Bris Ben HaBesarim, which literally means the covenant between the parts. And Kaplan talks about it. He actually has a diagram to show you this this idea of the Bris Ben HaBesarim, that the way they cut up the animals. The point is that they would take two things that were one, meaning two sides of one animal, and put them, and you'd create a space to walk through between the parts. So now, Zeb, you're onto something, because it's two hands that are one, right? And maybe even 2 feet that are one. Like if you put your hands out, right, they're where your mouth kind of would be. If you put your feet out, they're where the circumcision of the Brit Milah would be, so to speak. So there's this kind of correspondence of where the two sides are really one. They're two that are one. And this idea of a dialectic is, it's going to come up again. So let's just say there's this thing that the Sefer Yetzirah is introducing of 10 sfirot with a dialectic, with the power of speech. That, and I'm specifically not even talking about the lower circumcision, just because the Sefer Yetzirah is going to spend more time warning us about the dangers of speech, not about lashon hara, that you can do that on your own time, about the dangers of talking too much about the secrets.
Yeah.
Yes, Rabbi. Yes.
Okay, so this is Hammer on that. Her translation's a little different. She does obviously a play on word on this. And so, I'll just get to the part we're talking about. She does the 5 things with the 10 fingers, a single covenant set in the center, and then she bifurcates her translation. On one side, it's in word and language and speech, and the other one in the genitals and tongue and mouth.
Say it
Okay.
again.
Okay, so instead of it being like a one, here is a translation. She bifurcates a translation because she plays on the Hebrew that Milah can be, genitals, circumcision, but it also can be word. And then Lashon can be tongue. It also can be language. And then she also, the last one is for, let me see, where was it? And upeh can be speech or mouth. So she's trying to play on with this.
Okay. So yeah.
And here's another part that
literally doing that, it reads a little easier,
Right. It kind of gets us over the big hump here, which is what the heck is in the middle here? How can we have 5, and 1 in the middle? Okay. She's suggesting that what ends up happening is a single covenant in the center, and then she does a little commentary. It's like, I'll just try to, there's a few pages, but I think this is the key part. At the center of the 10 sfirot is the covenant, the inscription of the divine presence in the world. This single covenant is centered or oriented, mekaven, in the middle of the body, so that the body's appendages are on either side. We're going to see this word.
She's basically, I said what she said. She said what I said. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
We're good on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm like what I'm hearing, which is, a concise way of what I was just kind of trying to explain. And it doesn't fully satisfy everyone. That's the problem with Sefer Yetzirah. Whatever way, I'm trying to do it closer to the text, I think. But some of this is way up there, and just trying to stick to the text doesn't necessarily satisfy either, So let's continue. We're now on
1-4.
we're going to go on. There's a lot to talk about here on that Mishnah, but we're going to go to Mishnah 4 on page 38. Okay. Eser Sfirot B'Lima. Now again, it's the third time. It's almost like a mantra at this point. Eser Sfirot B'Lima, a third time. Now it's Eser V'Lo 10 and not 9. Eser V'Lo Achad Esrei, 10 and not 11. So now on this, I really love the Ramak, because he explains why you would think might be 9 and why you would think there might be 11 really nicely. So there's got to be some reason why it has to like emphasize that it's 10 and not 9 and 10 and not 11. Now he starts explaining something. Presumably it fits right into what we already know to be obvious, that the 10 Sfirot contain Chachma and Bina. But let's take it slowly. Let's say maybe, maybe not. Havein b'chachma v'chacham b'bina. Understand with wisdom and have insight with understanding. In other words, Chachma and Bina work together. But if you took it literally, you would say what we think is Chachma is actually Bina, and what we think is Bina is actually Chachma. Or not, they both are related to one another and contain an element of each other. Bachon behem v'chakor behem v'hemi davar al boryo. Kaplan translates it as examine with them and probe with them, make each thing stand on its essence. V'hashiv yotzer al machono, and make the creator sit on its base. Yossi, why don't you read a little bit to me? Read the translation for us.
From Hammer?
Yeah.
Okay, she says 10 inscriptions of the void, 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11. Understand in wisdom, be wise in understanding, examine them, delve into them, stand each thing on its clarity, on its absence, and return this creator to their dwelling place.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the commentaries here.
Rabbi, can I just bring in one thing I learned in the last
Yes.
couple of weeks, or maybe a little bit of knowledge is truly, truly dangerous in this business.
Yeah.
But one of the things I heard was that the Arizal said that Netzer and Chod are considered a single Parsuf.
They're interchangeable as being either 2 Sfirot or 1. Yeah.
Right, and that's how you get from you lessen it from 11 to 10, because you've also got the Sfira of Duct, which is the Keter brought down into this world supposedly. Whatever that means, please don't. I don't want to be hung as a pseudo corner. Okay. The dog agrees with me.
I'm looking. If you why don't you click on the Sadia Gon? I didn't pick this in particular on the S. Could you click on the? I'm sorry, not the Sadia Gon, on the Rivad. You clicked on the Rivad? It's one of the commentaries that's in the Safari edition.
Is that at the bottom, or is that?
No, you have to click on like here, for example, you press on that, the Mishnah we just read.
Yeah.
And it'll say commentary
Oh, yeah, I see.
on Rivad Sadia Gon. So you press on the Rivad. Okay,
I see, yeah.
so Yud Sfirot Blima Eser V'lo Tish Eser V'lo Achad Eser. I'm going to read it really quickly. Okay, it's also explaining this idea of the 10 Sfirot in the Olam and then the Shana and the Nefesh, which, by the way, we're going to get to later. So I'm not even going to bother. Like, he knows what's ahead, and he's bringing that into here, which is fine. That's what a good commentary should first and foremost go through the whole book and explain each thing based on knowledge of the whole book, at the very least, right? Here he says, "Chazar appears aleim in lahosef." He's going on and adding a layer here, explaining an addition that don't add, and the grow, don't subtract. Af bishesh b'nivrayim pachas miudetzbot. Not everybody's got 10 fingers. There's creatures with, I don't know, three claws and whatever, or a human that might be missing a finger. Oh yes, sir, al yudetzbot, or more than 10 fingers. Amar lach she'ein ikron ela yud. He says no. The primacy of this Sfirot is that it's 10. Wala hazircha al keser elyon afbi she'ena musag lefich nikra ayin. He's coming to warn us on what we call keter, even though it's incomprehensible and therefore it's called no thing. Nevertheless, it has something to it that we could discern or at least talk about. Lefichach amar esav lotesha. That's why he tells us 10 and not 9. Don't make the mistake and say, since keter is not understandable, como ilata ilot, like the source of all sources. Maybe, God forbid, don't count keter as one of the 10. Again, and this is the style of many of the commentators. I mentioned the Ramak is the same thing, just 10 pages of it, on this thing. Now he says, since all the Sfirot conclude with Yesod, the Ein Ba'ataras Davar Mechudash, and in the Atara of the Yesod has two parts of it. It has the crown and I don't like talking about these things. But it's got two parts of it. So one of the parts of the Yesod is Yesod. The other part is the Atara that becomes connected to Malchut. So he was saying maybe since the Yesod and Malchut are really the same part of the body, maybe it's only one. So maybe there's only 9. Say there's only 9, and that's why he says 10 and not 9. Not to disconnect, just like we want to count Keter, we also want to count Yesod and also Malchut. Okay, so you're seeing, we'll come back to some of the commentaries, but again, understand that makes sense. But is that what the Sefer Yetzirah is actually saying? Or is that what the Raavad is saying? Let's go on. Okay. Let's just stop for 1 second. This is Pshuto Shel Mishnah. This is just simply in the text itself. Probe with these things. Let's not even talk about what the different words mean. The Havem b'chachma v'chacham b'bina b'chin b'hem. Let's just talk about it's some type of chakira, drisha v'chakira, havana v'hasaga, some form of searching, analyzing, understanding, insight. Let's just take it. It doesn't matter. Like, just use your mind, use your spiritual insight, and get to the depth of the matter. But what happens then? And this is the key. Hashev yotzar al mechono. This, up until this point, arguably, you want to make God right. You bring a karban, you bring an offering. You want to make God right, you keep Shabbat. Like read the Chumash, read the Nevi'im. There are. This is how you be a Jew. There are things you do to be a Jew, and God is happy. It's a simplified version, but you give him his offering. It's Ishe Reach Nichochi. You give him his fire offerings on the fire that make him be satisfied. Now is a new thing, a totally new concept that comes into Judaism. Of course, it's not really totally new, but a little bit new. You want to reestablish God on his throne. What we thought was Greek and not Jewish, understanding, probing, is now Jewish. Or it was really there all along. You go back. Now we have to go back and read the biblical text again and say, can you read this concept of Hamid Dava Alburia Hashev Yotzer Amachono into the text of the Bible? It's not a stretch necessarily. When you talk about the Shekhinah, yes, there's a communal element of the presence of the divine, Hashochen Itam B'toch Tumasam, God who dwells within our midst, even within our inequities and our impurities, meaning there's a relationship between the Sibur, the Klal, the Makom HaMishkan, the Makom HaMikdash, the place, which we're going to get to, Olam Shana Nefesh soon. Okay, let's continue with number 5, Mishnah 5. Page 44. Esa Sfirot B'lima. Again, same opening line. 10 Sfirot of no thingness. Midasan Esa She'in himself. Again, the poetry here is of opposites. Their measurement is that which is infinite. What a great line. What's the size of your new apartment? It's immeasurable. What are you on? Right? Omek rachis v'omek achris. Again, opposites, literally the opposite. The depth of beginning and the depth of the end. Omek tov v'omek ra. The depth of good and the depth of evil. Omek rom v'omek tachas. A depth of height, exaltedness or highness, and a depth of bottomness. So, we could talk, I think Kaplan talks about, is going to spend a lot of time. Arya Kaplan was a physicist. So he's able to read the Sefer Yetzirah as a book also on physics, on dimensions, on hypercubes and the 5th dimension and 10 dimensions. Because here we're talking about directions here. Omek Mizrach v'omek Ma'ariv. The depth of east, the depth of west. Omek Tzafon v'omek Darim. The depth of north, the depth of south. Adon Yachid. Kel Melech Lemam. A singular master. God who is a faithful king. It's so difficult, I'm stroking my beard. What does this mean? Moshe B'kulam, he rules over all of them. Mimaon Kadsho, from his holy abode. Ad Ad, forever, forever and ever. Okay. That's a great line. Midasan eser she'en lehem sof. The 10 whose measurement is without end. So here is the first time where I'm going to say that my best explanation is fitting in with all the Kabbalists, what they say. That what is Eser Sfirot? How could you talk about godliness who's infinite and 10? The answer is it's 10, but each of the 10 don't have an end. There's something infinite about them, even though there's a number, there's infinity in the number. Now, I know that's an oxymoron. If there's 10, they're finite. No, the 10 Sfirot, the mystery of the 10 Sfirot is they're 10, but their measurement is immeasurable. They have the Ein Sof. So that brings me to a famous conundrum that the Kabbalists argued about. Are the Eser Sfirot divine or are they vessels? Meaning God is divine and the Eser Sfirot are vessels. It's like the cup is a vessel. I'm in charge of pouring the seltzer into the cup. The seltzer does not control. I'm the one pouring the seltzer in the cup. And I'm the one drinking the seltzer. What's the cup here?
But isn't it to do with the orot, the lights, and the light fills the vessels?
David knows the answer. Thank you. Beautiful. So that debate is, some of the Kabbalists said it's just the Sfirot are just a cup. God is, I mean, I don't want to compare myself to God, but just like I control the cup, God controls the Sfirot, and it's just that. It's just a vessel that God uses to do things with in the world. Other Kabbalists say, no. The 10 Sfirot are Elokut, the divine, comes a couple hundred years after this argument. Rabbi Moshe Cordovero says, I figured it out. The seltzer in the cup is divine. I was setting this up. I had to say that, the seltzer is divine. It's a mashal, by the way. It's a metaphor. Seltzer isn't really divine in as much as everything is divine. I don't want to single out seltzer, although it's a favorite of mine. But the seltzer in this metaphor is divineness, and that's the orot, that would be the equivalent of the energy, the light of the sphera. But the kelim, the vessels of the sphera, that is a vessel. That isn't Elokut. So there's this kind of like split the difference. So again, these are all commentaries. They came hundreds, thousands of years after the Sefer Yetzirah, but they still resonate. Like the part of the Sefer Yetzirah's ability for everyone to use it as clay in the potter's hand, to do with it as they please, is how like mysterious this is. So Esther Shem, so they're infinite. So we got to deal with this question, and it works, This idea of this infinite 10 that are 10 in number, whose measurements are infinite, and then we're just going to go. The Kabbalists are going to use this and mine this and go with it and run with it to talk about, well, what does that mean to have 10 sfirot, but to have or Ein Sof, right? That fits in with what we talk about, Ein Sof. So here we're introduced for one of the first times of not the word Ein Sof, but Ein Lehem Sof. Okay, we're getting to Ein Sofness.
Say something.
Yes, Ted.
Where on that She'ein Lehem Sof in the Sefaria, it translates that phrase as beyond Ein Sof. Now, do you like that translation? Because it's almost paradoxical to say beyond the infinite. That in itself is, I don't know, a novelty. It's to me beyond.
Whoever is doing the Sefaria translation, I doubt they just did that on their own. I'm sure, I'm 95% sure somebody you know, some commentary says something like that. But no, it's actually, Ted, that's a very good observation. I'm a little surprised to see that. Yeah. I wouldn't, the Kaplan doesn't translate it like that. I wouldn't translate it like that.
Okay, I don't know if
how
this
he gets to
translator
that.
trying to,
Beyond Ein Sof.
that, which is a paradox upon upon the infinite. I mean, it's okay. I just caught my eye.
Yeah. Yeah. On the contrary, most other commentaries say even though there's 10, they still have an element of Ein Sofness within them, almost like the opposite of the translation.
Oh,
Okay, let's continue. For example, you have here Kaplan is going to say you've got good, evil, up, down, north, south, east, west. And he tries to map that out with the spheres. Good is Keter, evil is Malchut, up is Netzach, down is Hod, north is Gvura, south is Chesed, east is Tiferet, Yisod, west is Yisod. Okay, now I don't have anything against trying to match up directions with Sfirot, and we'll talk about that later. But let's try to see it rather than just in the commentary. Let's try to see more of that in the actual text. Okay, let's go on to, you know, I have to say one thing because it's so beautiful when it says, this kind of juxtaposition of omek, rashis, omek, achris, the depth of beginning, the depth of end, right? So we've got rashis could be the sphirot, but it could also be like Torah, right? There's the beginning of the Torah, there's the end of the Torah. Good and evil, obviously there's some relationship between between good and evil somehow. There's some connection. When you get to the physical dimensions of up and down and east and west, there's clearly some, like, you know, you're talking about something that's in a relationship to each other. And then we go into the next Mishnah and you'll see how connected it is, which is on page 51 in the Kaplan in the Sefaria. It's Mishnah 6, I believe. Esa Spheros Belima, 10 Sphirot of, again, the same opening line, 10 Sphirot of nothingness or nothingness. Tzviatan Kemar Habazek, their appearance or their vision is the way Aryeh Kaplan translates it, is like the appearance of lightning, but tachlisan ein lahem kates, and their end has no finality to it, or the limit has no end. V'davro behen be'atzov v'shov, and his words in them is like running and then returning, yearning and then being more grounded. That's already a translation, not what the actual, that's an interpretation, not a translation. Ulamamarok sufa yudofu, and his words are rushing with like yearning. He says like, he says like a whirlwind, and before his throne they bow down. Go ahead and read that for us, Rabbi Yossi, if you don't mind, in your in Jill's translation.
you're on mute, Yossi.
Okay, so there's a problem with this because she seems to be using another text.
Oh, no problem. No
Mishnahs.
problem.
Okay, because by
That's
1:7,
fine.
she kind of comes back to that, but in 1:6, it's not that at all. It's
Okay,
like
let's go
another-
straight to 7 because I really wanted to talk about 7.
Yeah.
And I thought what was going to be said in 7 was going to be in 6, which is really like the thing I wanted to jump on right away. So it's on
Yeah.
page 57 in Kaplan. Eses Sfirot Blima, 10 spheres of nothingness, Noatz, Sofan B'tchilasan, B'tchilasan B'sofan. Their end is wedged, or he translates it as embedded in their beginning, and their beginning is wedged in their end. Kishalhabes Geshur Begachelis, like a flame is connected to the coal that it's burning within. Adon Yachid ve'ein lo sheni. He is a one master, or the master is singular, and there is no second. Ulifnei echad mi'at sofer. And before one, what do you count? So I just wanted to say, and then Yossi, Rabbi Yossi, I'm going to ask you to read the translation that you've
Not
got.
the same.
Okay, that's why
Okay.
I'm going to ask you.
Yeah,
to read it.
it's
But
really.
before that, go ahead.
Can
Go
I
ahead.
ask a question? So,
Sure.
this comes up before in a number of the books about this. There are, isn't there at least 3 or 4 different Sefer Yetzirahs as far as length, as far as materials inside and outside?
Yeah, Yossi, you have a very good point. There's a lot to talk about there. I'm actually going to go because I was just asked. We're short. Maybe somebody else wants to help come to Shul for Minyan Ted, because we need some more for Minyan at Shul.
To
So
be
Yossi, I have
continued.
to cut that. I have to finish. I'm sorry, I can't answer.
No,
you.
that's okay. So next
Yeah.
week, more Sefer Yetzirah, right?
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
Okay.